Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to everyone joining from around the world. And I'm so happy to welcome Dominique Mouthon to Little Leaps, a truly inspiring Montessori educator, leader, and parent whose journey continues to touch the lives of many. Dominic first discovered Montessori as a parent, looking for a meaningful education for her two daughters. Like I think in many of the Montessori educators, it's pretty common. I have seen that personal experience sparked a deep commitment to the Montessori philosophy, leading her to become an educator and leader herself. Today, she brings with her years of experience as a classroom teacher, head of school, and co founder of Clever Education Solutions. From leading schools like Adams Montessori in Quincy, Massachusetts, and Follow the Child Montessori in Raleigh, North Carolina, to mentoring educators and supporting schools through Clever Education Solutions, Dominic has made a lasting impact on Montessori communities. What's even more beautiful is that her 4-year-old grandson is now a Montessori student himself, continuing the journey into the next generation. So I'm truly honored to have you here, Dominic. Today's session is Parenting Journey with Special Needs Children. And I'm very sure your story, wisdom, and the heart will resonate deeply with many of us here. So, would you like to start, with introducing yourself and how you came across this journey? I know you started exploring for your two daughters, and that is when you came across. But what made you stick to it?
Yeah, thank you. Madhuri, it's a pleasure to be here and thank you so much for reaching out. I love to talk about Montessori and my daughters and my grandson as well. I came across Montessori as a parent of a 2-year-old. My daughter was two, and we are originally from France. And as all good, French people at about the age of two, children are sent to the national public education system, which is free and open to everyone, and it's preschool. And so I was looking for that in a suburb of Boston, Massachusetts, and I did not find it, but I did find Montessori. I happened to be observing in a classroom, in a 3 to 6 year old classroom, and the guide was giving a lesson on land and water forms, and it was the island and the lake, and looking at that lesson, it brought me back to my own classroom in a little village in France. And I remember so vividly, there were the definitions of the lake and the island were written on the blackboard. And it didn't make sense to me. These words were just jumbled. That didn't make any sense. I didn't get a picture. And in that Montessori classroom, I just had the picture, the representation of the island and the lake. And that just moved me so much that I decided. I went back to my husband and I said, this is what we need to do for our daughter. So that was my very first introduction to Montessori.
So beautiful. So, your experience as a parent evolved, right? When you noticed the learning differences in your child as well, right? So, what were the questions that you navigated through at that time, and how did Montessori philosophy supported you in that?
Right. So the my second daughter is the child, who with whom I discovered some learning differences, and she's always been a very spirited child with lots of big emotions. She was either happy or sad. There was no emotions in the middle. And when she started, people used to say she's an accident waiting to happen. There was so much energy coming out of her, and there were lots of boo-boos and bumping into things. And when she started learning to ride her bicycle, she avoided obstacles at the very last minute. And that was, strange to me because that really was, that sparked the moment of wondering if something is wrong with her vision. And nothing actually was wrong with her vision, but it was something with the tracking. The two eyes were not tracking properly. So that was, the beginning of our journey. And when she was also in the primary classroom, the guide started to say, she's taking a long time to memorize the sounds of the sandpaper letters, or, so there were some different difficulties that came up throughout, her early years. And finally, when she was in a lower elementary class, so about first and second grade, the guide just shared that it was really difficult for her to start to learn to read. However, that guide was uh, per, very persistent, and she knew my child very well. And Matilda loved dogs, everything to do about dogs, and she was able to give her materials, cards and words about to do with dogs, and that's how Matilda started to read. So the Montessori guide, based on her observation and the knowledge of my child, was able to provide the materials that enticed her to make the effort to learn to read. However, that's also when it was recommended to us that we had her tested, evaluated, and she was then diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, in addition to the visual tracking. So that was really hard. It was really hard for us because the Montessori school told us, they can't really serve her, and they don't have, the skills and the environment for that. So we had to have her in public school, which was really a very difficult decision for me to make.
Oh, so what did you do from your end to support her further?
We did a lot. First of all, we had her, we after the evaluation was done and she was in public school, um, I really became her advocate. The teachers and the principal had the best intentions, but my child needed support, and the way that the public school system worked in Massachusetts at that time, which is 30 years ago now. um, Once the child started to make progress, they stopped the support and the additional learning accommodations that they gave them, before, which didn't make any sense to me. It just showed that, what she was receiving, the services she was receiving, was working, and all of a sudden they stopped. Okay, so we, hired private tutors, and throughout the entire the entire years that she was in school, through high school until she graduated, she had a tutor to support her and help her, get through the difficulties of the material she was learning. And in addition, we also made the decision, and that was a difficult decision as well, to give her some ADHD medicine. Um, that was a big, big moment, in our parenting with my husband. We didn't feel really comfortable for a long time. And yet, once she was on medication, she made progress by leaps and bounds. So it was the right thing to do. Um, but it was not an easy, decisions to make.
I'm sure. So, what suggestion would you like? Because um, I have come across many parents who see these kind of small, I wouldn't call it issues, but a slight difference from
Right.
the usual behavior of children, and many a times it's very difficult for parents to accept. And this also leads to late diagnosis of,
Yes.
learning disabilities.
Right.
So, how would you, suggest parents? Because I know many a times parents also get offended when it comes to when it is coming from a school, administration, or the educator is talking about it, and you are not really ready to receive this information. So,
Right.
what kind of suggestion would you give to parents when these kind of information is communicated? Because obviously the educators are also not meaning harm; they just are trying to help. Yet, actually, the question should be both ways. How should educators communicate to parents in such a way that it doesn't feel very overwhelming? And
Yes.
yeah, we can come to the parents part later, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, let's start with the school. Because as you know, as educators, and especially as Montessori educators, I think we always want to see the child, look at the child with the best possible light and the potential of this child. We believe that, this child with enough support and within the Montessori classroom, the potential will eventually, come to bloom. The problem is, this is true, by the way, right? This is true as long as we give the child the proper support. And, as educators, we tend to be wanting to give the children enough time and maybe too much time before we talk to the parents about our observations. Montessori is based on the adult observation. And this is really important to communicate to parents. This is what I'm seeing. And this is not a one-time event. It happened, in the past couple of weeks. It happened 3 times the first week, and maybe 5 times the second week. So we have to have concrete information to provide with the parents, and not wait until you as a teacher become frustrated or really worried, because we want to have a partnership with those parents, and the earlier we communicate with them, the better it is. Now, as a parent, yes, it's not easy to receive that information. God knows that, even with my Montessori training and my Montessori experience, it was difficult and it was very emotional. And I felt uh, a lot of emotions. And it's just normal, because that's your child. That's the most precious thing, in your life as a parent. So, um, but we have to, turn the mindset a little bit and look at, first of all, everybody learns in a different way, right? Some people have more gifts in one area than others. um, my older brother, for example, is an architect, and don't ask me to draw anything because I can't. So, maybe he took all the gifts, the family gifts, to him, and didn't leave anything to me. But we all have our own gifts and qualities and potential. And your child, the difficulties or the experiences that your child is having, is just a reflection of where the child is in the development of his or her personality. It's not because, they have dyslexia or ADHD that, their life is forever going to be a failure. On the opposite, the opposite of that. Those children have special gifts. They have immense, talent that once the brain is fully developed, right, those talents will be able to come to fruition, and the realization of the potential of that child. So um, it's a shift of a mindset. It's difficult as a parent, and it's difficult as an educator too.
Absolutely. So I really loved your idea of documenting the observations that you make about the child before reaching out to the parent, and also the fact
Mhm.
that not to get frustrated in the end and then reaching out the parent, because then the communication is going to be a little hard.
Yes.
You are
Yes.
pushing
Absolutely.
it on the child, on the parents. You are not open to the communication. You are trying to close it by saying, "This is it. This is how much I could do, and now it's not in my hand." So I really get that, and it's really important for us to not reach that threshold before communicating to the parents. So when we are making these observations, do you have any suggestions as to what are the criterias or what are the areas that we can observe so that we can understand the lag or uh, the gap or the milestones not being met? What can we do to figure that out, and how often do we observe so that we can give these kind of updates to the parents?
Right. Well, I think observation as Montessorian is ongoing, isn't it? And we don't have to have formal period of time when we sit down and we take notes in our notebook when we're in the classroom. It's always around us. It's really looking at everything that is happening and making mental note maybe at first during the midst of the classroom. And then, when you have a little time, maybe during lunch break or maybe after school, then you jot down your observation, more in details. I know sometimes some class in some schools, there are some programs that allow you to, speak in your telephone, in your phone, and take and take notes if oral notes if you want. I'm a little bit old school, and in I try to have a piece of clothes with a pocket so I could have my little my little piece of paper, and I could quickly jot down things. And we look at everything, don't you? We look at the physical movement of the child in the classroom, like the bumping into things. Do they fall often? That's usually a sign of maybe some depth perception issues, right? Uh, the social interactions, how does my child relate to other children? And, from a 3-year-old perspective, for example, they are working alone most of the time. But then 4-year-olds are pretty social. Then they are starting to develop those social skills and trying to figure out navigating, how do we express ourselves when we have a conflict with another child. And maybe you'll see patterns evolving, from your observations. And patterns are really, really important because we can all do something, for one time around and then it's gone. And that doesn't mean that, it's an issue. But if there's a pattern that starts emerging, then we have to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so this reminds me that there was this child in our school environment, and he was very much interested only in cars. Like you said, your daughter has a keen love for dogs in the similar manner, and it took around 6 months to 8 months to actually realize that there is some issue, and that actually hindered his support in terms of uh, sup, giving that help that he needed through those materials, right? Instead, I felt that somewhere the educators had a bit of judgment that this child is more
Mm,
playful and he talks about cars and he asks about cars because he's not interested in the materials but only in games, and it's all about cars because children love toys, right? So in such situations, how to have that discernment so that as an educator, because as you said, observation is the key, and even after observation, even after having that keen eye with that prejudiced judgment, prejudgment for the child, how do we get
right.
over it to support that child early on?
Right, right. That's a really good point. Um, I think we have to go back to our Montessori roots, where, Montessori says that we observe without judgment and without preconceived ideas. We only look at, the actions of the child. So several things actually in that answer. We look at what the child does, right, without judgment. But we also have the responsibility of presenting to the child an array of different activities, right? We have to somehow be able to find materials in the classroom that the child is going to connect to. And that's our task as Montessori educators, is to establish those connections. And sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes it takes really, trying to be creative and go find something out of the closet, the once the school is over, so that you can have different type of offerings that you can present to that child. You can also talk to the parents and say, these are my observation. I see your child is very keenly interested in cars. Uh, is that happening at home as well? And, gather information from the parents, and maybe you'll have some insight. But it's a tricky. So it's the looking at what's happening without any judgment, right? It's a really a work on ourselves as Montessori educators, and also reaching out to the parents, so that because maybe they have something that they are not telling you, right? Maybe they just had a new car, they just bought a new car, and that child is, keenly interested in the new car. So who knows? But we have to be kind of a detective, and what's going on in that child's life that is, making that child so interested in cars, and trying to figure out, what else can I present.
Yeah, that's an interesting example, and I love the idea of checking with the family as to what's going on, the updates in a very friendly manner, so that you get to know what you need to check and observe in the classroom environment. Yeah, it's very 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 interesting way to approach. Yeah. So this is about the school environment, the classroom environment. Now, also there is another concern, or in terms of learning disabilities, when there is a language, either the language delay or
Mhm.
sometimes making the eye contact. Uh, in those situations, we know that the parents are aware of, but they will not accept, and we are not able to communicate it in a way that is not too offensive, but at the same time, uh, it's helpful for them to go and support the child and have them checked properly with all the tests, necessary tests, right? So
Right.
when the child, why I'm coming to the language delay is because during COVID, there was a time when children were majorly left on screen, and that also caused a lot of language delay even with the children who had a normal milestone or normal developmental stages. Um, so in such situations, how do we know that it is because of the screen time, or does it also come under learning disability? How can we differentiate between the two of the language delay issue?
That's a really good question, because I'm, currently an interim assistant head at a school, in close to where we live. And I had retired from my previous school 5 years ago, so right before COVID. And now I'm back in a school, and I see such a difference in the children 5 years later from what they were, 5 years ago. And I believe a lot of that is because of COVID and because of, so many, I mean, a year and a half where these children were left at home, parents had to work. There was, fewer interaction, social interaction with the larger community. And I'm absolutely convinced that there's a negative impact, that we currently see either in language development, but also in the social emotional development of children. So I think it's, I'm not a language specialist. So my experience, my answer is really based on my experience, but the field experience that I have, I would say, um, is the child making progress, right? Over time, are you able to see some progress that the child is making? If there's no progress, to me, that's a concern. Then I would definitely refer them to a language specialist. And the earlier we can do, in the child's development, the better. I really believe in early intervention because that's where the brain is the most malleable, and that's where the connections are happening, and that's when we need to provide, the support. But in a 3 to 6 classroom, is the child memorizing the sandpaper letters? Is the child working with the movable alphabet? So if there's any type of progress, then that's positive. But if there's none, I think it's really a source of concern. And I would approach the parents with the observation. I gave your child a lesson on the letter, the sound on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. And by Friday, the child still didn't remember, the or couldn't pronounce the sound. So, we have to, when we talk to parents, we have to have concrete evidence of what we are saying. It's not because I say so or because I was in a bad mood that day or, whatever. But it's because I have, documented what I did. And from what I did, I see a pattern that concerns me.
So, this is about a classroom environment. Now, there are many parents, after getting to know about the learning disabilities in their child, they plan to homeschool their children. So, in a home environment, do you have any practical strategies or routines for parents that can help them with these children at home?
Well, when I was told that my child had dyslexia, and I'm an educator, I went through my, primary and elementary training. So the 6 to 12 year olds, I'm trained in Montessori. But when I was told that she had, dyslexia, um, I didn't dream of um, having her homeschool and me being the teacher for several reasons. One, because I don't know enough about dyslexia, despite my training. I don't know enough about the specifics about teaching, children with this type of learning difference. I'm not trained I'm not a language therapist. I don't have that training. So I wouldn't dream of doing, pretending that I can do the job myself. Um, so that's the first, the first idea that comes to my mind is that, these people go through a lot of training to be able to answer the needs of children. And, this is not something that you can just, do, and because you're taking care of them. I would be really hesitant, to, in that situation. Um, so therefore, I would say if this is something you really want to do as a parent, then you need to educate yourself on what you kind of support does this child need to be able to make progress, right? Maybe take some classes at the local, community college or something online, or but you have to be educated so that you can support the child.
So, And if children are moved to a special education, setup, what
Mhm.
kind of collaborations should the families have or establish to support these children in that environment, along with in the home environment? Because many a times I have also seen with children with learning disabilities, I've seen parents losing their temper. I have seen parents not realize, as you said, because the parents are not trained to support these children, they are not educated enough to understand the needs of these children. Many a times when children are going hyperactive or demanding or not able to express verbally, sometimes it also uh, irks the parents, right? And in such situations, it's difficult because parents also have their own pressures and their own traumas and their own frustrations. So in such situations, it's difficult for them to hold back, but at the same time, they know it won't be right to hit the child or you know admonish the child. So uh, how can they support these children at home environment, and at the same time what should they ask from the schools so that they know how to support them at home? Let me rephrase it. Basically, if the children are going to a special education school environment, what are the important cues these families should learn from the school so that they can apply it at home, that helps them in their mental regulation and not lose their temper or their, lead it to frustration?
Right. So I would say two things. One is go to the school administrators and ask them specifically, I'm here to help. What can I do at home to support the child, my child? And what type of learning do I need to do? And the school should be able to tell you that. Maybe they're going to give you some extra exercises. We did that with my daughter. We had to every day, look at the spelling words, this type of thing. So get the cues from the school. The school should be able to give you the type of partnership that they are looking for with the parents. And it could be, right? It could be that they tell you, we are in charge of doing the education of your child. What we want you to do as parents is give your child different experiences, have them, explore outdoors. It's important to have outside, time so that they can be running around and, expressing their physical energy into something specific or into a sport or something. We can't always be in the intellect. We also have to take care of the physical needs of our body, right? So it could be that the school tells you that, or it could be that the school tells you maintain a regular structure, a regular schedule at home. For some of these children, it's really important to the predictability of things is really important. You get up in the morning, you have breakfast, then we get dressed, then we go to school, then when we come back, you may have a snack, we go maybe play to the playground, then we do this. So the scheduling is sometimes for us adults seems to be too restrictive, but for children it's actually pretty reassuring, especially when they are young. They need that predictability, and they feel more comfortable. The things that just come up out of the blue sometimes can be very destabilizing for children. So that's one thing. There are plenty of things that we can do at home as parents without thinking about, academics. We can give children responsibilities. Even a 2-year-old can bring one plate and bring it to, the little table where he may have snack, or give a little a little glass to carry over to, maybe grandpa or grandma who's sitting, on the other side of the living room. Maybe we give a 6-year old the responsibility of emptying the dishes out of the dishwasher. All these activities that are, what we call practical life, in Montessori, really help the child with a coordination of movement, which is really important because it's not only, the physical aspect of things, but we know that everything that we do is related and it comes from our brains. So we are working, on a mental capacity while doing something, physical. So our work as parents is different from the work of educator. And I think, we have to respect each other's domain and we can support each other, right? But everything that we can do with our children at home and, giving them responsibilities, I think that's really important. Giving them a sense that they are capable of doing something. So that's a win. It makes them feel good about themselves.
I so agree with this. I think we should not take these children differently just because they have learning disability. We should treat them as equal as any other individual because, like you said, if we are not giving them these opportunities, not just that it is helping in developing their brain and making those connections, the neural, network, but also it's giving them confidence that
Absolutely.
come what may, I am capable and I can do something. And I'm sure I just want you to share your inspiring story and where your daughter stands today because I think many families need to know what, what is the outcome, what is the result of the support that you give at home and the support that is given from a good environment makes a child into even with any kind of learning disabilities. I'm sure people can succeed in life.
Oh, absolutely. So my daughter today is 36 years old. She is a phenomenal sales professional,
Wow.
and she is making more money than my husband and I combined ever made. If that's a measure of success, it might be or it may not. But she's fantastic, and she is a fabulous, young woman who knows herself, who is, fully capable of, holding, a conversations and entering into a discussion and relationships with powerful people at the company where she works at. And she is fully, I mean, I couldn't be asking for more. We are so proud of her and, all the work that she herself put into her own learning.
Wow. Yeah, that really shows because I have seen in many families, children, parents especially, parents lose before the child. They lose the confidence in the child before the child loses in himself. It's
Right,
quite
right.
often. So I think we have to keep that spirit high and ignite ourselves every time we feel low and keep supporting the child because if this is the result, why not? Everybody should. I think there was a book on ADHD, I remember, which shows about it's not a disability, as you said. These children are special and we should know how to support these children. So I think if we communicate or we approach the parents with this kind of mindset, I think this will also make a great difference, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is difficult to parenting children who learn differently, and whether it be ADHD or dyslexia or whatever. It is very taxing for parents. That's absolutely true. It's very difficult sometimes to keep your cool and take a few steps back so that you let the situation evolve without you stepping in and fixing, right? Sometimes we want to fix things for our children, and we can't. We have to let them be able to take ownership of their full, abilities and personality, and trying to find who they really are and to be successful on their own. It is very taxing. It's difficult. There were many times when it's an exercise of restraint on yourself, because you see what they're going to do is not going to work, and yet you can't do it for them. So I totally empathize with the parents who are raising children and guiding those children. It's really difficult, but it's also, we have to train ourselves to look at them from a gift perspective, right? It's not a disability. It's a different gift set that they have. And there are so many famous people who are dyslexic, people who have ADHD, and who are extremely creative and successful. So it's just those 25 years when the brain is developing. That is tricky.
I have a 20-year-old boy in our society, and he was throughout a slow learner, and he was suffering from learning disability. The first interesting thing is that the mother, she actually studied about learning differences and learning disabilities, and she supported the child at home and in school. And today he is doing mass communication. And recently I was having a chat with him, and he said, Auntie, I scored 87%. And I was like, that's brilliant. So, yeah, I think if we believe in their potential, they also reveal it. Yeah, they reveal their potential.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it was so lovely talking to you, Dominic. Um, um, we have some questions. I have some questions which parents also asked while registering. I would like
Sure.
audiences to also ask questions if you have any, and we'll love to answer them.
Absolutely.
Unmute yourself, or you can type your question in the chat box, and we'll address them. Anyone?
Uh, Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you so much for this lovely conversation. It's been so enlightening to listen. I'm an educator myself. My nephew has autism, so I was very much interested in how to support him because I'm also a mother. I'm an educator, and now I see him, and after listening, I just realized that it's not so much a disability; it's a different ability that we have to tap into and support and nourish so that they can reach their potential. And I'm so inspired. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, Dominique. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Merci beaucoup.
Oh, thank you. Merci beaucoup, Shiba. I think frankly, the most difficult time is getting those children through school, because in schools they have to they have to follow routines, they have to follow directions, things that they may not be the most apt to do. And but once they get, we're able to support them through their schooling years, then they really have the ability to express their gift and bring them to fruition.
Yeah. Thank you, Shiba, for your wonderful words. Really, thank you. It means a lot to us. We have Pavitra Suresh. She asks if we can give a brief of some symptoms of ADHD.
So usually ADHD, so there are different types of attention deficit, right? There's the hyperactivity, which is I'm going to categorize that a little bit, harshly, but usually boys are more prone to ADHD, hyperactivity. It's difficult for them to keep their body in check. It's difficult to follow directions. They are always in movement. We see those children at the school where I am, at the moment, and um, they are full of joy and they are full of wonderful ideas, and everything is, go, go, go. Uh, it's difficult for them to concentrate on one task. So that's a lot of movement, and not only physical but also at the in their brain, a rich imagination and wonderful ideas. There's also the non-hyperactive, side of ADHD. It's sometimes more seen commonly seen in girls, where the girls are, children with the less, non-hyperactivity. They seem to be daydreaming a lot. They are in their own mind, and they uh, don't necessarily, pay attention to the directions. They hear you, but they don't uh, uh, right. They don't register what is being said. It's a lot of that daydreaming, quiet, reserve type of ADD.
Okay. Uh, I hope this answers your question, Pavitra. Yeah. Okay. We have Husna. She has raised her hand. So, Husna, would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hi, yeah. So I have a daughter who's in upper elementary, and she has autism and ADHD as well. And I feel like while the flexibility and how individualized you can make Montessori education at this level really works for her learning differences. I feel like especially in the elementary level, what I've noticed is that a lot of the learning is facilitated through social interaction. So like I would say that there's a lot more social learning that happens in the elementary classroom compared to a mainstream school, at least in India. um, and I feel like there she's a little bit disadvantaged because of how much she struggles with peer interactions. Um, also I feel like, given the flexibility, like you mentioned earlier, that the Montessori educators want to have a lens of always seeing the potential of the child, so it is very largely child led. However, I feel like because it's so child led, the educators kind of, they don't know whether it's a gap that is happening because of learning differences, or whether it's a gap that is going to be it's just part of her journey with that subject, or journey with that learning material. And I feel like I have to do a lot of collaboration and advocacy for her to kind of point out a lot of the time that no, I think this is a gap and we need to figure this out, versus them being like, okay, she's gonna get it maybe 6 months later, maybe 1 year later than her peers. Um, and given that it's so child led,
Yeah.
I feel like her learning kind of slips through the cracks a little bit, where like a mainstream educator would be constantly micromanaging the child on, like, okay, have you done this, okay, have you done this. So especially with the ADHD brain, that level of scheduling and that level of task management is not there in the Montessori elementary environment. So what would you recommend for that I do as a parent or the team, like luckily we have an amazingly neurodivergent affirming educator team that's working with my daughter. So I'd love to be able to give them a little more concrete recommendations from a fellow Montessorian, if possible. Like what would your advice be?
Yes, thank you for that question. So it is absolutely true in elementary and even more, at the upper elementary level. The learning happens a lot with, in groups of the students. So the you touch on a very interesting point, because it is, um, the freedom of the Montessori environment within the limits that we need to be able to, give. So it is, child led, it is student led, but it should be within limits. And for example, it's not okay for a child, in elementary, at the elementary level, not to do any, work for, so such a long period of time, for example, right? Usually the educators should be able to put in place some type of structure within which, the students are able to choose their activity, their work. So for a child with ADHD, I would probably, recommend some type of schedule, maybe a weekly schedule or a daily schedule that is done in connection between the student and the educator, for what type of lessons does she need to participate in, or what type of lesson does she need to practice, and you establish maybe a daily or a weekly schedule with the child, so that the child is an active participant in the decision making process, but you as the educator provide the limits. It is not okay for a child not to do, let's say, any, geometry work because, for an entire week, because it's not, the child doesn't feel like doing geometry, right? It's important to do geometry on a regular basis and to move the child along the curriculum. So you do that as, in a cooperation setting where it's a dialogue between the student and the educator. But there needs to be a mix, a reasonable mix of student-led within, the structure established by the adult. Does that make sense?
Husna? Yeah. Yeah. She gives a thumbs up.
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Do you have any?
Do you know if this is something that they already do at in the classroom, or is it entirely student led?
No, they already do this. So they have work journals, and they
Okay.
have, they're managing timelines and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think she needs a little more structure,
Yeah.
like, breaking things down into smaller pieces, which I'm guessing because they don't have neurodivergence or learning difference specific training, their intention. So if I take a suggestion to them based on my learning, so I'm also a professional in the field, I'm also neurodivergent myself. So I do give them a lot of suggestions, and they're very happy to work with them, but it's basically a lot of trial and error. um, so for example, if she has a language assignment, I see that she knows what to do, but she does not know how to break the larger what to do
Yes.
into micro tasks,
Right. Yeah.
and at her level with the upper elementary, at her level her peers very intuitively by now have the skills, so her executive functioning is very poor. A lot of the working memory issues, a lot of with mathematics she understands concepts, she knows how to apply them, but she can't remember what concept she had to apply when she looks at her work the next day.
Yeah.
So I think she's struggling a little bit with that aspect of things.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a, that's this type of a child will definitely require some more one-on-one guidance and direct teaching. At some point, if you see that the child is not able to direct herself and break things, have a big project and break things down, then the teacher needs to be able to guide her. And at the beginning, you just do it for them so that they can, have an example of how to do it, and then later on, they work together to do the same thing for breaking down those bigger projects. But yeah, it's something that is, depending on the size of the number of students in the class. Sometimes, there are a lot of students and you don't have the time, necessary to spend to with individual students, but you have to be her advocate, always. And, sit down with those teachers and say, maybe what can I do to help? We've got to find a way of giving her a system that works for her style of learning.
Dominic, I have a question here. So, like Husna just mentioned, that if she is doing a math material, right, and she left it at a point, and then the next day she has to take it further, but she forgets what she did the previous day, right? In those situations, does a one-on-one can only help, or if there is some note written already for the child, can she read, Husna?
Yes.
Yeah. So if there is a note based on whatever she has done, can that help the next day for her to take it forward? If the educator, in the beginning of starting off the material, working with the material, if the educator just guides them with reading whatever update she has made for the previous day,
Right.
and then continue, can
Right.
that help?
Right, absolutely. The repetition is important for some children, and they need to go back, to what was taught or learned the previous day or the previous week in order to be able to move forward. So yes, they should be able to do that. Mm-hmm. Something we haven't talked.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry.
Yeah, I have done I have attended few sessions on autism. What I understand is Montessori is a very indirect approach. We don't directly help the child. It is an indirect approach. That's what Montessori is do. But autistic children, they need direct teaching.
Direct teaching.
It's like
Yes.
teaching. It's not guidance. You need to teach them.
Right.
You need to a little bit forcefully push them to do it. Where it is not a pattern of a Montessori environment. We can't do that in a Montessori environment, is what I understand. And repetition also, a bit pressure need to be given to those children. It's like you need to do it. You have to do it. Where it doesn't work for a Montessori environment, it's like always there is freedom of choice in Montessori environment, right? We don't push children. It's us. We assist children. We guide children. We don't teach them. But autistic children need to be taught. very directly. Repetition also be need to be forcefully done to them, and we need to follow time pattern to them. I mean, this time you have to do it, you need to see to that it has to be done. I mean, I think Montessori can help them to keep them socialize and other aspects and all those things. But teaching, actual teaching, I think the mother or the family should put a lot of effort than the Montessori facilitator is what I feel. This is my opinion.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, I yeah, you're making a very good point, and I think based on really individual children's needs, right? The Montessori environment may or may not be the best suited for the child. Depending on the level of support, the level of regularity, the level of repetition, etc. Montessori may not be the right environment. And secondly, the educators may not have the appropriate training. And that's also part of the piece, that the puzzle that we haven't talked about yet, is that it's really important for Montessori school administrators to realize that we have to bring professional development, opportunities regularly ongoing for the teachers, in order for them to be able to serve to better serve, students with various needs. And we also have to be able to recognize that at some point we are, sorry to say that this is not the best environment for your child, right? We have to be able to do that kindly and with a lot of empathy. But the child needs to be served, and sometimes we cannot serve them.
Just now you were saying something about the notes, and yeah, that is when the discussion came in.
So she they do have they're on it with that kind of stuff, and I think that you, Dominic, you bring up a very interesting point about are you serving the needs of the child? Because in a lot of ways, like the reason that we've stayed with the Montessori method as long as we have, is that for all of her needs, I think first of all, to have ADHD and autism together is a bit of a hard line to be towing all the time, because they have almost opposing needs in terms of learning. So where
Mm,
the ADHD child seeks novelty, the autistic part of the child seeks predictability. So you're
right,
constantly having to balance out the needs, even in the learning environment, where the repetitiveness and the predictability helps the autistic part of the experience,
right,
but it also causes the ADHD part of the experience to absolutely,
right,
lose it and shut down and things like that. So I
right,
think being a human with both ADHD and autism is a bit of a struggle to begin with. But that being said, I would say that the environment meets pretty much all of her needs. Socially, in terms of the sensory issues that she has, a lot of the other constraints that come up for her. So this is still by far miles ahead of any other school system that we have thought about. Um,
right,
and I would say even homeschooling would not be a good idea for her, because the relationship suffers, like having, like Pavitra mentioned, forcefully being repetitive, things like that. Then the home doesn't become a safe space for the child
right,
either. So that's not an option for us, given all of those constraints. So I would say that, looking at the entirety of the situation, does this school meet her needs? I would say about 85%. So
hmm,
far we have been bridging the gap, with, I work with her personally at home to bridge the gaps that come up in school. However, I'm now this summer, so we're in the middle of like we'll be going to a new academic year in June. So in fact, this summer I have just found somebody who's willing to try working with my daughter one on one, to give her more learning and self management tools when it comes to all of these things that hopefully she can apply when she goes to the new academic year. So I don't know how that's going to pan out. So we'll find out soon enough. But I also think it's very, very hard to find remedial educators or special educators who are Montessori trained. All the educators that I have come across are, very mainstream, and I don't think either of them would last more than one session with each other, both from my daughter's perspective as well as from the tutors. Like I've seen some very, very chaotic things happening. So, is there any recommendation that you would make in terms of what I should look for in terms of the one-on-one help? Like if I had to get it for her outside of school, which I'm willing to do, how can it be complementary to the Montessori method as much as possible?
I don't know. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is compatibility of personalities, right? I think I would look for somebody who is kind and somebody who is understanding and patient. Because the learning can happen once we have established the relationships between the child and the adult. So that's the starting point. If this doesn't happen, there's no learning that's going to follow, right? So you have to find the right person, the right, the person with the understanding, the kindness, the patience, the ability to relate to your child. And once you have that, the learning will follow.
That helps. Yes. Thank you.
Connection is the key. I think to begin with anybody, any work, I think connection is the key. And with, yeah, special need children, yes, a lot more.
Yes.
And though we are trying to keep it a light-hearted conversation, it is equally, hard being a parent or an educator to work with these children. But at the same time, if we understand their need and we have that connection to support them wholeheartedly and holistically, I think we are the ones who can make that difference in each child's life. And I wish you all luck. Husna, I really wish you find a good tutor, good educator for your child very soon. And I'm just hoping for every family and every child to have a better future. And thank you, Dominic, for coming here on Little Leaps and sharing your insights with us. We had a really nice conversation, and yeah, we had an amazing discussion as well with everybody participating here. Thank you so much for joining in today.
My pleasure. It was lovely to be here, and I hope I imparted a little bit of hope and good humor as well.